In March 1998, Michael Jordan walked into a Chicago grocery store with his mother for what seemed like an ordinary shopping trip. But when they reached the checkout counter, a dying cashier named Rosa Martinez made a desperate decision that would change thousands of lives forever. What she did in that moment didn't just save her family, it created a legacy that's still helping people today. This is the true story of how one woman's courage to ask for help transformed into a movement that proves sometimes the smallest acts of bravery create the biggest miracles. The cold March wind whipped through the streets of Chicago's South Side, carrying with it the promise of spring and the weight of another long winter finally ending. Michael Jordan pulled his black BMW into the small parking lot behind Peterson's Family Market, the same neighborhood grocery store where his mother had shopped for over 30 years. "You sure about this, Mom?" Michael asked, turning off the engine. "We could go to that fancy place on Michigan Avenue. They deliver, you know." Dolores Jordan adjusted her purse strap and gave her son the look she'd perfected during his childhood. The one that said she wasn't changing her mind, no matter how famous he'd become. "Michael Jeffrey Jordan. I've been shopping at Peterson since before you could dribble a basketball. Mrs. Peterson knows exactly how I like my meat cut, and her produce is always fresh. Besides, I promised Carlos I'd bring him some of those cookies he likes." Michael smiled, despite himself. Even at 35, when he'd won 5 NBA championships and become the most recognizable athlete in the world, his mother could still make him feel like that skinny kid from Wilmington, North Carolina. "Carlos? The Martinez boy who bags groceries," she explained, stepping out of the car. "Sweetest young man you ever saw. 17 years old, straight A's, works here every weekend to help his mama. Reminds me of someone I used to know." The parking lot was busier than Michael had expected for a Saturday morning. A few kids pressed their faces against the chain-link fence, having spotted his car. Word traveled fast in this neighborhood. He pulled his baseball cap lower over his eyes and zipped up his plain black jacket. Sometimes he missed being able to go places without causing a scene. The electronic bell chimed as they entered the store. Peterson's hadn't changed much since Michael's childhood visits with his mother. The narrow aisles were packed tight with products, and the familiar smell of fresh bread from the bakery section mixed with the scent of cleaning supplies and coffee from the deli counter. "Mrs. Jordan," a voice called from behind the customer service desk. Betty Peterson, now in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, waved enthusiastically. "And Michael, how wonderful to see you both." Within minutes, word had spread through the store. Customers began gathering at the ends of aisles, stealing glances and whispering to each other. A little girl tugged on her mother's coat, pointing excitedly. 2 teenage boys debated whether they should ask for autographs. Michael had learned to navigate these situations with practiced ease. He signed a few napkins, took a quick photo with Betty Peterson, and gently but firmly established that he was just there to shop with his mother. Most people understood and gave them space, but he could feel eyes following them as they moved through the store. Dolores pushed the small shopping cart with the determination of a woman on a mission. She had her list organized by aisle, and she knew exactly what she needed. Cereal from aisle 3, the kind with extra fiber that she'd been trying to get Michael to eat for years. Fresh vegetables from the produce section, where she squeezed tomatoes and examined lettuce leaves with the expertise of someone who'd been feeding a family for decades. "You remember when you used to hate grocery shopping?" she asked, placing a bag of apples in the cart. "You'd whine and complain the whole time, asking when we could leave." "I remember," Michael said, grabbing a box of crackers from the top shelf for her. "I also remember you making me carry all the bags to the car, because you said it would make me stronger." "Did it work?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "Maybe a little." They moved through the store slowly, Dolores stopping to examine prices and quality with the careful attention of someone who remembered when every dollar mattered. Michael found himself relaxing despite the attention. There was something comforting about this routine, about being just a son helping his mother with errands. Near the dairy section, they encountered a small traffic jam. An elderly man with a walker was trying to reach milk from the back of the refrigerated case. Without thinking, Michael stepped forward. "Let me help you with that, sir." The man looked up, startled, then broke into a wide grin when he recognized who was offering assistance. "Well, I'll be damned. Michael Jordan getting milk for me. Wait till I tell my grandson." "What kind would you like?" Michael asked, genuinely friendly. 2%, if you don't mind. The wife says whole milk is bad for my heart, but this tastes like water to me. Michael retrieved the milk and handed it over. My mom says the same thing about my diet. Mothers know best, right? The man laughed and continued on his way, already planning how he'd tell this story to everyone he knew. As they approached the checkout area, Michael noticed the lines were longer than usual. Saturday morning rush, plus the added curiosity of his presence, had created a backup. 3 registers were open, each with a different cashier. "Which line, Mom?" he asked. Dolores scanned the options and pointed to the middle register. "Rosa's line. She's the fattest, and she's always so sweet." Michael looked at the woman behind register 2. Rosa Martinez appeared to be in her early 50s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and careful makeup that couldn't quite hide the tiredness in her eyes. She moved efficiently, scanning items and bagging groceries with practiced speed. But there was something else, a tension in her shoulders, a way she pressed her lips together when she thought no one was looking. As they waited in line, Michael watched Rosa interact with customers. She was polite, professional, even warm with the regular customers she obviously knew well. But he noticed her hands trembling slightly as she counted change, and the way she occasionally paused, pressing her palm against her chest as if steadying herself. The customer ahead of them was an older woman buying cat food and frozen dinners. Rosa chatted with her about the weather, asked about her grandchildren, and carefully double-bagged the heavier items. When the woman left, Rosa took a deep breath and looked up at the next customers. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Michael, but she quickly composed herself. Professional, respectful, not starstruck like some of the other customers had been. "Good morning," she said quietly. "Did you find everything you needed today?" "Yes, thank you," Dolores replied warmly. "How are you doing today, Rosa?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Jordan. Thank you for asking." Michael watched as Rosa began scanning their items. Her movements were careful, deliberate. She handled his mother's vegetables gently, made sure the bread wouldn't get squished, organized the bags efficiently. But he could see something in her eyes, a weight she was carrying, a secret she was holding close. As Rosa reached for the last item, a box of tea bags, she hesitated. Her hand hovered over the scanner, and she looked up at Michael with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not the usual fan excitement or curiosity. Something deeper, more desperate. Something that made him pay attention in a way he hadn't expected when he'd agreed to this simple grocery roast trip with his mother. Rosa took a breath, as if gathering courage for something important. Her next words would change everything, though none of them knew it yet. Rosa's hand remained frozen over the scanner. The tea box felt heavier than it should. Behind Michael and his mother, she could see other customers getting restless, checking their watches, and shifting their weight from foot to foot. But something was happening inside her chest, not the familiar pain she'd been hiding for months, but something different. A sudden, overwhelming need to speak. "Mr. Jordan," she said quietly, her voice barely louder than the hum of the store's refrigeration units. Michael looked up from helping his mother organize her purse. "Yes?" Rosa's courage faltered. What was she doing? This was Michael Jordan. He probably heard sob stories every day. People asking for money, for help, for favors. She was just a cashier at a neighborhood grocery store. Who was she? "Rosa?" Dolores Jordan's gentle voice broke through her panic. "Are you all right, dear?" The kindness in Mrs. Jordan's voice nearly broke Rosa's composure completely. For 8 months, she had carried her secret alone. 8 months of hiding, pretending, lying to the person who mattered most to her in the world. 8 months of watching her 17-year-old son Carlos work himself to exhaustion, never knowing that his mother was dying. "I'm sorry," Rosa whispered, quickly scanning the tea and placing it in a bag. "Your total is 4. As Dolores counted out exact change, she always paid in cash, old habits from when every penny counted. Rosa's mind drifted back to the night that changed everything. September 15th, 1997. She remembered the date because it was the day after Carlos's 17th birthday. She had been working a double shift, covering for another employee who had called in sick. Around midnight, while restocking the frozen food section, the pain had hit her like a freight train. Not the usual chest tightness she'd been experiencing for weeks, but something sharp and terrifying that dropped her to her knees behind the ice cream freezer. Jennifer Kim, working the night shift with her, had found Rosa there 20 minutes later, gasping and clutching her chest. Jennifer wanted to call an ambulance, but Rosa begged her not to. No insurance, no papers, no money for hospital bills. Instead, Jennifer drove her to the free clinic on Ashland Avenue, where a tired resident doctor took one look at Rosa's EKG results and went pale. "Mrs. Martinez, you need to see a cardiologist immediately. This is serious." The cardiologist at Rush University Medical Center, Dr. Sarah Chen, a kind woman who spoke Spanish and didn't ask too many questions about insurance, delivered the diagnosis that shattered Rosa's world: severe mitral valve stenosis. Her heart valve was failing, probably had been for years. Without surgery to replace it, she had maybe 6 months to live. With surgery, she could live a normal life. The surgery would cost $47,000. Rosa had $1,247 in her savings account. "Mrs. Martinez." She could still hear Dr. Chen's voice. "There are programs that might help. Charity care, payment plans." "I'm not documented," Rosa had whispered. "If I apply for help, they might send me back to Mexico. My son, he's so close to graduating. He's been accepted to college." Dr. Chen's face had filled with compassion and frustration. "Let me see what I can do. But Rosa, you need to tell your son. He deserves to know." That was 6 months ago. Rosa had returned to work the next day as if nothing had happened. She smiled at customers, lifted heavy boxes, worked overtime whenever possible. Every extra dollar went into a coffee can hidden behind the flower in her kitchen cabinet. By March, she had saved. She needed $43,000. She had maybe 6 weeks left. "Thank you," Dolores said, taking her change and receipt. "You have a wonderful day, Rosa." "Wait," Rosa heard herself say. The word escaped before she could stop it. Michael and his mother turned back. Rosa's hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the counter to steady herself. "Mr. Jordan, I need to tell you something." The customers behind them in line began to murmur impatiently. Michael noticed and gestured for them to step aside, moving his mother and their bags to the end of the checkout counter where they wouldn't block traffic. "What is it?" he asked, and Rosa was struck by how gentle his voice was. Not impatient or annoyed, just listening. Rosa reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She had been carrying it for 3 weeks, ever since Carlos brought it home from school. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. "My son Carlos," she began, then stopped. How could she explain Carlos to someone who had never met him? How could she make Michael Jordan understand what her boy meant to her, what he had overcome, what he deserved? "Carlos is 17. He's the best person I know," she continued, her English becoming more accented as emotion overwhelmed her usual careful pronunciation. "He works here on weekends, helps me pay rent. He studies every night until midnight, sometimes later. He wants to be a doctor." She held out the paper. "This came 3 weeks ago, from Northwestern University." Michael took the letter and read it quickly. His eyebrows rose slightly. "He was accepted to Northwestern? That's incredible. You must be so proud." "I am," Rosa said, tears now openly flowing down her cheeks. "But we can't afford it, even with the partial scholarship they offered. We need $15,000 for the first year." Dolores moved closer, her maternal instincts activated by Rosa's obvious distress. "Rosa dear, what aren't you telling us?" Rosa looked at this kind woman, this mother who had raised a son who became everything good about success and fame, and made a decision that went against every instinct she had about keeping her problems to herself. "I'm dying," she whispered. "My heart, I need surgery that cost $47,000. I have $3,000 saved. The doctors say I have maybe a month, maybe 2. The words hung in the air between them. Around them, the normal sounds of the grocery store continued: shopping carts rolling, cash registers beeping, children asking their parents for candy. But in their small circle, time seemed to stop. "Carlos doesn't know," Rosa continued. "I haven't told him about the heart condition. He thinks I'm just tired from working so much. I wanted him to finish high school, to graduate, to have that moment of happiness before..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Michael and his mother exchanged a look. One of those wordless communications that pass between people who have shared a lifetime of experiences. Rosa saw something shift in Michael's expression. A recognition of something familiar. "What's your son's full name?" Michael asked quietly. "Carlos Eduardo Martinez. He's gonna be valedictorian next month. And you work here how many hours a week?" 40 usually. Sometimes 50 when someone calls in sick. I also clean office buildings 3 nights a week. Dolores placed a gentle hand on Rosa's arm. "Rosa, why are you telling us this?" Rosa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because when I see you with your son, how proud he is of you, how gentle he is with you, I see how I want Carlos to remember me. Not as someone who gave up, but as someone who fought for his dreams until the very end." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not asking for money, Mr. Jordan. I know you probably get asked for help every day. I wanted someone to know that Carlos exists. That he's special. That somewhere in Chicago there's a boy who works as hard as you did, who dreams as big as you did, and who deserves a chance." Rosa folded the acceptance letter carefully and put it back in her pocket. "Thank you for listening. I'm sorry for bothering you." She turned back to her register where the next customer was waiting with a cart full of groceries and an impatient expression. But Michael Jordan didn't move. He stood there, looking at this woman who had just entrusted him with the most important story of her life, and felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with the kind of man his mother had raised him to be. "Rosa," he said quietly. She turned back, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "What's your address?" Rosa stared at Michael Jordan, certain she had misheard him. "My address? Yes," Michael said simply. "I'd like to know where you live." Rosa's heart pounded, not from her condition this time, but from confusion and a flutter of something she was afraid to name. Hope was dangerous when you were dying. Hope made the pain worse when reality set in. I live at 200T47 West 18th Street. Apartment 3B, she said slowly. In Pilsen. But Mr. Jordan, I don't understand why. Thank you, Michael interrupted gently. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket and wrote down the address. Rosa, I want you to know that what you just shared with me, that took real courage. Before Rosa could respond, the customer behind them cleared his throat loudly. Excuse me, but some of us have places to be. Michael turned and looked at the man, really looked at him with the kind of intense stare that had intimidated opponents on basketball courts for years. The man's irritation melted into embarrassment. Of course, Michael said politely. We're all finished here. As they walked toward the exit, Dolores took her son's arm. Michael, what are you thinking? I'm thinking, Michael said quietly, about a conversation we had last month. Remember? About what it really means to be successful. Dolores did remember. They had been sitting in his Chicago apartment watching the news coverage of another athlete who had gotten into trouble. Michael had been unusually quiet that evening, reflective in a way that came rarely to someone who lived such a public, fast-paced life. Mom, he had said, sometimes I wonder if all this means anything. The championships, the money, the fame. What's the point if it doesn't make the world better somehow? Success isn't just about what you achieve, Dolores had told him. It's about what you do with those achievements. It's about remembering where you came from and helping others get to where they're going. Now, walking through the parking lot of Peterson's Family Market, Michael was thinking about Rosa's hands, how they shook as she held her son's acceptance letter, how carefully she had folded it back up, like it was made of gold instead of paper. He was thinking about the pride in her voice when she talked about Carlos, the same pride he heard in his own mother's voice when she talked about him. Tell me about when I was Carlos's age, Michael said as they got back in his car. Dolores smiled, settling into the passenger seat. You were impossible. Stubborn, determined, convinced you could do anything if you worked hard enough. Sometimes I worried you were pushing yourself too hard. What did you worry about most? That you'd forget to be kind, she said without hesitation. You were so focused on winning, on being the best, that I sometimes wondered if you'd remember that other people were fighting battles too. Different battles, but just as important to them. Michael started the car, but didn't put it in drive. Instead, he sat there, thinking about Rosa Martinez and her son Carlos. A boy he had never met but who was working weekends at a grocery store to help pay rent. A boy who studied until midnight and dreamed of being a doctor. A boy whose mother was dying and didn't know it. "I want to tell you about someone," Michael said. "Rosa's son? Carlos. But also Rosa." Michael turned to face his mother. "Mom, she reminded me of you." Dolores raised an eyebrow. The way she talked about Carlos. The way she's willing to work herself to death to give him opportunities. The way she's hiding her pain so he can focus on his dreams." Michael paused. "Remember when Dad lost his job when I was 15? You took that night shift at the factory, but you never told us how tired you were. You never complained, never let us see you worry." "That's what mothers do," Dolores said simply. "You worked 3 jobs so I could play basketball. You drove me to practice when you were exhausted. You bought me shoes when you needed them yourself." Michael's voice grew soft. "Rosa is doing the same thing for Carlos. Working multiple jobs, sacrificing everything, believing in her son's dreams even when her own world is falling apart." Dolores was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," Michael admitted. "But I need to know more about them. About Carlos. About what kind of young man Rosa has raised. About whether they're really who they seem to be." "You're going to investigate them?" "I'm going to be smart about this, Mom. You know as well as I do that people sometimes exaggerate their situations when they meet someone like me. I've been fooled before." It was true. Over the years, Michael had encountered his share of people who saw him as a walking ATM, who invented or embellished sob stories to try to get money from him. He had learned to be cautious, to verify stories before acting on them. But something about Rosa felt different. The way she had almost not spoken at all. The way she had said she wasn't asking for money. The way she had folded that acceptance letter so carefully. Like it contained her son's entire future. "If they're real," Michael continued, "if Carlos is really who Rosa says he is, then maybe we can help. And if they're not..." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "Then at least we'll know we were careful." "But Mom, I have a feeling about this one. Rosa wasn't performing for us. She was sharing her heart." As they drove away from Peterson's family market, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the store's back entrance. Carlos Martinez had arrived for his Saturday afternoon shift just as his mother's conversation with Michael Jordan was ending. He had seen them talking, seen his mother crying, seen the way the famous basketball player had written something in his notebook. Carlos had no idea what had just happened, but he could tell it was important. His mother had looked enduring when she returned to her register, scared and hopeful at the same time, if such a thing was possible. "Mama," he had asked quietly during her break, "is everything okay? I saw you talking to Michael Jordan." "Everything's fine, Micho," Rosa had said, but Carlos knew his mother well enough to recognize when she was hiding something. She had been hiding something for months now, working extra hours, taking vitamins she couldn't afford, sometimes pressing her hand to her chest when she thought he wasn't looking. "Did he ask you for directions or something?" "Something like that," Rosa had said, which wasn't really an answer at all. Now, as Carlos stocked shelves and helped customers, he couldn't stop thinking about the look on his mother's face. He had seen that expression before, the night she had told him about his father's accident, the day she had explained why they had to move to a smaller apartment, the morning she had cried over the college acceptance letter she thought he hadn't seen yet. It was the look of someone carrying a secret too heavy for one person to bear. Carlos finished loading the last of the canned goods onto the shelf and made a decision. Tomorrow was Sunday, his mother's day off. Tomorrow, he was going to ask her directly what was wrong. No more letting her protect him from whatever she was facing. He was 17 years old, almost a man. If his mother was in trouble, he wanted to help carry the burden. He had no idea that across town, Michael Jordan was making plans to investigate their family's story. He had no idea that his mother had just taken the biggest risk of her life by trusting a stranger with their most desperate secret. All Carlos knew was that something had changed today, something important. And whatever it was, he was determined to be strong enough to handle it. His mother had taught him that strength wasn't about being the biggest or the fastest or the smartest. Strength was about facing the truth, even when it was scary. Strength was about protecting the people you loved, even when it cost you everything. Tomorrow, Carlos decided, it was his turn to be strong for his mother. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold. with the kind of March weather that couldn't decide if it wanted to winter or spring. Carlos woke up early, as he always did, and listened for sounds from the kitchen. Usually, his mother was already awake by 6 a.m., making coffee and preparing for whatever extra work she had planned for her day off. Today, the apartment was silent. Carlos padded quietly to his mother's bedroom door and listened. He could hear Rosa breathing, but it sounded different, shallow and quick, like she was having trouble getting enough air. Through the thin walls of their apartment, he could hear Mrs. Gutierrez next door getting ready for church, her radio playing soft Mexican music. He decided to let his mother sleep and made coffee himself, the way she had taught him when he was 12. 2 scoops of the cheap brand they bought at Peterson's, a pinch of sugar to cut the bitterness. As the coffee brewed, Carlos sat at their small kitchen table and looked around the apartment that had been home for the past 8 years. The living room was tiny, but spotless. Rosa had hung family photos on every available wall space. Carlos at his 8th grade graduation. Carlos receiving an academic award. Carlos in his cap and gown from the high school honors ceremony. There were no photos of Carlos's father. Those had been put away years ago, too painful for Rosa to see every day. On the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker sat a small stack of bills. Carlos had been noticing them more lately. The red stamps that said final notice. The envelopes his mother opened quickly and then tucked away. He had offered to get a second job, but Rosa always refused. "Your job is school," she would say firmly. "My job is everything else." But Carlos was almost 18 now. In 2 months, he would graduate as valedictorian of his class. In the fall, if everything worked out with financial aid, he would start college. He was old enough to know when his mother was struggling. Old enough to help. Rosa emerged from her bedroom around 8 a.m., moving slowly and holding onto the wall for support. She had tried to fix her hair and put on a little makeup, but Carlos could see how pale she looked, how tired her eyes were. "Good morning, Mijo," she said, attempting her usual bright smile. "You made coffee." "Thank you." "Mama, sit down," Carlos said gently. "I'll make breakfast. I can cook." "Sit down," Carlos repeated, and something in his voice made Rosa obey. She settled carefully into her chair at the kitchen table, and Carlos noticed how she pressed her hand to her chest as she did. Carlos scrambled eggs and heated up leftover tortillas, watching his mother from the corner of his eye. She was staring out their small window at the courtyard below, where children were playing on the rusty swing set. Her expression was distant, sad in a way that made Carlos's stomach tighten with worry. "Mama," he said, setting a plate in front of her, "we need to talk." Rosa looked up sharply. "About what?" "About what's wrong with you." The words hung in the air between them. Rosa picked up her fork and took a small bite of eggs, chewing slowly, buying time. "Nothing's wrong, Carlos, I'm just tired from working." "No," Carlos interrupted, surprising himself with his firmness. "Mama, I'm not a little boy anymore. I see things. I see how you hold your chest sometimes. I see how you can't climb the stairs without stopping to rest. I see the doctor bills you try to hide." Rosa's fork clattered to her plate. "Carlos, I saw you talking to Michael Jordan yesterday," Carlos continued. "I saw you crying. I saw him write something down." "Mama, what's happening?" For a moment, Rosa considered lying again. She had become so good at it over the past 8 months, lying to Carlos, lying to her coworkers, lying to herself about how much time she had left. But looking at her son's face, seeing the worry and determination there, she realized she couldn't protect him anymore. "I'm sick," she whispered. Carlos felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. "How sick?" "My heart. The doctors say, they say I need surgery." "Okay," Carlos said, trying to stay calm. "Surgery is good. Surgery can fix things. When do you have it scheduled?" Rosa's silence told him everything he needed to know. "Mama, why don't you have it scheduled?" "Because it costs $47,000, Rosa said, the words coming out in a rush. "And we don't have $47,000. We don't have health insurance that covers it. And because I don't have the right papers to be here, Carlos. If I try to get help, they might send me back to Mexico." Carlos stared at his mother, processing this information. $47,000. It might as well have been 47 million. They lived paycheck to paycheck, saving every penny they could for his college expenses. "How long do you have?" he asked quietly. The doctor said 6 months without surgery. That was in September. Carlos did the math quickly. March. She had maybe a month left, maybe 2. Why didn't you tell me? Because you have your whole life ahead of you, Rosa said, tears streaming down her face now. Because you're going to college. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to help families like ours. I didn't want my problems to ruin your dreams. My dreams don't matter if you're not here to see them come true, Carlos said, his own voice breaking. Rosa reached across the table and took her son's hands. They matter more than anything. Carlos, promise me something. Promise me that whatever happens, you'll still go to college. You'll still become a doctor. You'll still help people. Mama, we can figure this out. There has to be a way. Promise me. Rosa insisted. Carlos looked at his mother, really looked at her. He saw the woman who had worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat after his father died. The woman who had sat up with him every night when he was sick, who had celebrated every good grade like it was a miracle, who had never missed a single school event despite working constantly. I promise, he said. But only if you promise me something too. What? Promise me you'll tell me what Michael Jordan wanted yesterday. Promise me you'll tell me exactly what you said to him. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. Yesterday felt like a dream now, like something that had happened to someone else. A moment of desperate courage that had probably meant nothing to a man who heard sob stories every day. I told him about you, she said finally. I told him about Northwestern, about how hard you work, about what a good person you are. I told him, she paused. I told him I was dying. Carlos's eyes widened. You told Michael Jordan you were dying? I wasn't asking for money, Rosa said quickly. I wanted someone to know that you exist, that you deserve good things to happen to you. What did he say? He asked for our address. Carlos leaned back in his chair, stunned. Michael Jordan had their address. Michael Jordan knew his mother was dying and that Carlos needed help getting to college. Mama, Carlos said slowly. What if he wants to help us? Mijo, don't get your hopes up. Famous people hear stories like ours every day. He was just being polite. But Carlos was thinking about something his English teacher had said during a unit on heroes and role models. True heroes, Mrs. Rodriguez had told the class, are people who use their power to lift others up. Not just themselves. Maybe, Carlos said, but maybe not. Maybe some heroes actually do the right thing. Neither of them knew that at that very moment, across town, Michael Jordan was making phone calls, calling Northwestern University, calling Rush Medical Center, calling people who could verify everything Rosa had told him. Neither of them knew that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't imagine. But Carlos had a feeling, the same feeling he got before big tests, when he had studied hard and was ready for whatever came next. A feeling that sometimes when you've been strong for long enough, the universe sends you exactly the help you need. Monday morning found Michael Jordan in his downtown Chicago office, surrounded by the trophies and awards that marked one of the greatest careers in sports history. But today, he wasn't thinking about basketball. He was thinking about Rosa Martinez and her son Carlos, and whether their story was everything it seemed to be. Michael had learned to be careful over the years. Success had brought him many wonderful things, but it had also brought people who saw him as an opportunity rather than a person. He had been approached by countless individuals with heartbreaking stories, some real, some exaggerated, some completely false. Each experience had taught him to verify before he acted. Patricia, he called to his assistant, Patricia Williams, who had worked for him for 5 years and knew how to handle sensitive situations with discretion. Patricia appeared in his doorway, notepad ready. She was a woman in her 40s with kind keens and the organizational skills of a military general. Michael trusted her completely. I need you to do some research for me, Michael said, handing her a piece of paper with Rosa's address written on it. Quietly, carefully. I want to know everything about the Martinez family at this address. Patricia looked at the paper and recognized the neighborhood. Pilsen was one of Chicago's oldest Mexican-American communities, known for its colorful murals, family-owned restaurants, and hard-working residents. What kind of information are you looking for? She asked. Start with the son, Carlos Martinez. 17 years old, supposed to be valedictorian at his high school. I want to know if that's true. I want to know what his teachers say about him, what kind of student he is. What kind of person he is. Patricia nodded, making notes. Anything else? The mother, Rosa Martinez, works at Peterson's Family Market on the south side. She says she also cleans office buildings at night. I want to know if she's really working as hard as she claims. I want to know about her character, her reputation in the neighborhood. You want me to investigate them? Michael was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain what he was feeling. Patricia, I met this woman yesterday. She told me a story that could change everything for her family. But I've been fooled before. I need to know if they're who they say they are before I make any decisions. Patricia understood. Over the years, she had helped Michael donate millions to various charities and causes, but she had also helped him avoid several situations where people had tried to take advantage of his generosity. I'll be discreet, she promised. Patricia's first stop was Lincoln Park High School, where Carlos was supposedly a student. She arrived during lunch break and asked to speak with the principal, Dr. James Foster. Dr. Foster was a tall man in his 50s who had been working in Chicago public schools for over 20 years. I'm doing a background check on one of your students, Patricia explained, showing her identification. Carlos Martinez. It's for a potential scholarship opportunity. Dr. Foster's face lit up immediately. Carlos Martinez? That young man is extraordinary. Are you here to offer him a scholarship? Because if you are, you'd be investing in one of the finest students I've ever had the privilege to know. Patricia took notes as Dr. Foster told her about Carlos. Perfect attendance record for 4 years. GPA of 4.20. Student council president. Volunteer tutor for younger students. Captain of the debate team. And yes, he would indeed be valedictorian at graduation in May. But you know what makes Carlos special? Dr. Foster continued. It's not just his grades, it's his character. I've never heard him complain, not once, despite the fact that I know his family struggles financially. He works weekends, helps support his mother, and still maintains the highest academic standards. Tell me about his mother, Patricia said. Rosa Martinez is a saint, Dr. Foster said without hesitation. She comes to every parent-teacher conference, every school event, always asks how she can help Carlos do better. I've never met a parent more dedicated to her child's education. Patricia's next stop was Peterson's Family Market. She went in as a regular customer, buying a few items while observing the store and its employees. She quickly identified Rosa behind register 2, a small woman with tired eyes but a genuine smile for every customer. Patricia watched Rosa work for 30 minutes. She saw how Rosa carefully bagged each customer's groceries, how she remembered regular customers' names, how she double-checked prices to make sure people weren't overcharged. She saw how Rosa's hands shook slightly when she thought no one was looking, and how she occasionally pressed her palm against her chest. Excuse me. Patricia approached Rosa during a brief lull. I'm new to the neighborhood. Everyone says this is the best grocery store around here. We try to take good care of our customers, Rosa said warmly. Are you looking for anything special today? Patricia made small talk for a few minutes, learning that Rosa had worked at Peterson's for 15 years, that she knew the prices of most items by memory, and that customers clearly trusted and liked her. After leaving the store, Patricia spoke with Betty Peterson, the owner. Rosa Martinez? Betty said when Patricia asked about her. She's one of the best employees I've ever had. Never missed a day of work in 15 years. Not even when she was obviously sick. Always stays late if we need her. Always volunteers for extra shifts. Her son Carlos comes in on weekends to help nicest young man you'd ever want to meet. Patricia then drove through the Pilsen neighborhood, getting a feel for where the Martinez family lived. The apartment building at 2047 West 18th Street was old but well-maintained, in a working-class area filled with families who took pride in their community despite limited resources. She spoke with Maria Santos, who owned Abuela's Kitchen, a small restaurant 3 blocks from the apartment building. Carlos Martinez? Maria's face brightened. That boy works for me on weekends. Most reliable employee I have. Comes in every Saturday and Sunday. Never complains about any task I give him. And you know what he does with his paycheck? Gives it straight to his mother. Keeps maybe $5 for bus fare and lunch. What's he like as a person? Patricia asked. He's respectful, hardworking, smart as a whip. But more than that, he's kind. I've seen him help elderly customers carry their food to their cars. I've seen him share his lunch with homeless people. His mother raised him right. What about his mother? Rosa? She's been looking tired lately, worried about something. But she's good people. When my husband was in the hospital last year, she stopped by every day to check on me, even though she was working 2 jobs herself. By Wednesday, Patricia had a complete picture of the Martinez family. She returned to Michael's office with a thick folder of notes and a clear conclusion. "Michael," she said, setting the folder on his desk, "everything Rosa Martinez told you is true. Carlos is exactly who she said he is. Valedictorian, hardworking, kind, respectful. Every person I spoke to had nothing but praise for both of them." Michael opened the folder and read through Patricia's notes. Teacher recommendations that called Carlos exceptional and inspiring. Comments from neighbors about Rosa's character and work ethic. Documentation of Carlos's academic achievements and volunteer work. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "I spoke with a nurse at Rush Medical Center. She couldn't give me specific information about Rosa's condition because of privacy laws, but she confirmed that Rosa has been a patient there and that her situation is serious." Michael closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. He thought about his conversation with his mother, about the sacrifices she had made for him, about the kind of man she had raised him to be. "Patricia, I need you to make some phone calls." "What kind of calls?" "First, call Northwestern University. I want to speak with someone in the financial aid office about Carlos Martinez's scholarship situation. Second, call Dr. Sarah Chen at Rush Medical Center. Tell her I'd like to discuss a potential patient of hers. Are you going to help them?" Michael stood up and walked to his office window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, a 17-year-old boy was studying for final exams, while his mother was dying of a heart condition she couldn't afford to fix. Somewhere out there, a woman was working multiple jobs and howling her pain because she loved her son more than her own life. "Patricia," Michael said quietly, "sometimes you meet people who remind you why you were put in a position to help others. I think Rosa and Carlos Martinez are those people." Patricia smiled and picked up the phone. "I'll make those calls right now." Thursday evening arrived with the kind of spring rain that made the streets of Pilsen shine under the streetlights. Carlos sat at the small kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and notebooks preparing for his final exam. Advanced calculus problems covered one page, chemistry formulas filled another, and his English essay on the American dream lay half-finished beside his calculator. Rosa was at her evening job, cleaning offices downtown. She wouldn't be home until after midnight, which meant Carlos had the apartment to himself for studying. Usually he liked the quiet. Tonight, though, the silence felt heavy. Ever since Sunday's conversation, when his mother had finally told him the truth about her heart condition, the apartment felt different. Sadder, more fragile. Carlos tried to focus on his calculus homework, but his mind kept wandering. $47,000. The number seemed impossible, like trying to count the stars in the sky. He had done the math over and over. Even if he got a full-time job making minimum wage, even if his mother worked every possible hour, they couldn't save that much money in time. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Carlos looked up from his textbook, confused. It was 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday. They rarely had visitors, especially at this hour. Mrs. Gutierrez next door sometimes came by to borrow sugar or salt, but she usually called first. The knock came again, more official this time. 3 firm raps. Carlos walked to the door and looked through the peephole. In the dim hallway light, he could see a tall man in a dark business suit, holding a briefcase. The man looked professional, serious, maybe in his 40s. "Who is it?" Carlos called through the door. "My name is David Thompson. I'm an attorney. I'd like to speak with Carlos Martinez about an educational opportunity." Carlos kept the chain lock attached and opened the door just a few inches. "I'm Carlos Martinez. What kind of educational opportunity?" David Thompson smiled warmly. "The kind that could change your life. May I come in? I have some documents I'd like you to look at." Carlos hesitated. His mother had taught him to be careful with strangers, especially ones who showed up unannounced with promises that seemed too good to be true. But something about this man seemed legitimate. His suit was expensive, his briefcase looked real, and he had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Can you show me some identification?" Carlos asked. David reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card and a driver's license. Through the crack in the door, Carlos could see Thompson and Associates, Legal Services, printed on the card, along with an address in downtown Chicago. Carlos made a decision that would change everything. He unhooked the chain and opened the door. "Thank you," David said, stepping into the small apartment. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I wanted to catch you when you were home from school." Carlos gestured toward the small couch in their living room. The apartment was tiny but spotless, just the way Rosa had taught him to keep it. Family photos covered the walls, and Carlos's academic awards hung in neat rows above the television. "You have an impressive collection of honors," David observed, looking at the certificates. "Valedictorian, National Honor Society, perfect attendance. Your mother must be very proud." "She is," Carlos said, still standing by the door, ready to run if necessary. "Mr. Thompson, what's this about?" "I didn't apply for any scholarships recently." David opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Carlos, someone has established a scholarship specifically for you. Full tuition, room and board, books and a living stipend. 4 years at Northwestern University, as long as you maintain good grades." Carlos stared at the papers David was holding. The words didn't make sense. Full tuition? Northwestern? For him? "I think you have the wrong person," Carlos said slowly. "My family, we don't know anyone who could afford to do something like that. The donor prefers to remain anonymous for now." David explained, "But I can tell you that this person was very impressed by your character and your mother's dedication to your education." Carlos's mind raced. Anonymous donor? Someone who knew about his mother's dedication? There was only one person he could think of, who had recently learned about their family situation. Does this have anything to do with Michael Jordan?" David's expression remained neutral. "Professional. I can't discuss the donor's identity at this time, but I can tell you that this scholarship is real. It's fully funded and it's being offered to you." Carlos sank into a chair, overwhelmed. For 3 days, since learning about his mother's condition, he had been trying to figure out how to help her, how to save money for her surgery, how to make their impossible situation work. The idea that someone might want to help him go to college seemed like a dream. "There has to be a catch," Carlos said. "Nobody just gives away college tuition to strangers." "There is one condition," David admitted. "The donor would like to meet with you and your mother. Officially. Tomorrow evening, if possible." Carlos thought about his mother, working late nights cleaning offices, hiding her pain, sacrificing everything for his future. If this was real, if someone really wanted to pay for his college education, it would mean Rosa could stop working so hard. It would mean she could focus on getting the medical care she needed. "My mother works tomorrow night," Carlos said. "She cleans buildings downtown. The donor is flexible with scheduling. This meeting is very important to them." Carlos looked at the papers David was still holding. Legal documents with official seals, Northwestern University letterhead, numbers that represented more money than his family had ever seen. "If this is some kind of joke," Carlos began. "It's not a joke," David said firmly. "Carlos, I've been practicing law for 20 years. I've never seen someone go to these lengths to help a family they barely know. This donor believes in you, believes in your potential, believes in what your mother has sacrificed to get you this far." Carlos felt tears building in his eyes. After years of watching his mother work multiple jobs, after months of worrying about college costs, after 3 days of knowing she was dying and they couldn't afford to save her, suddenly there was hope. "What do I need to do?" he asked quietly. "Just show up tomorrow night. Be yourself. Be the young man your mother raised you to be." David smiled. "And Carlos, bring your acceptance letter from Northwestern. The donor wants to see it." As David packed up his papers and prepared to leave, Carlos walked him to the door. "Mr. Thompson," Carlos said, "will you tell the donor something for me?" "Of course. Tell them that whatever happens tomorrow night, just knowing that someone believes in me, that's already changed my life." David shook Carlos's hand. "I'll make sure to pass that along." After David left, Carlos sat alone in the quiet apartment, staring at the business card the lawyer had left behind. Thompson and Associates, Legal Services. A real address. A real phone number. Could this actually be happening? Carlos walked to his mother's bedroom and opened the small wooden box where she kept important papers. Inside, beneath old photographs and birth certificates, was his Northwestern acceptance letter. The letter that had made his mother cry with joy and worry at the same time. Tomorrow night, he and his mother would meet the person who might make it possible for him to go to college. The person who might give them the hope they desperately needed. Carlos carefully folded the acceptance letter and put it in his backpack, next to his calculus homework and chemistry notes. Tomorrow, everything might change. For the first time in 3 days, Carlos allowed himself to believe that sometimes when you've been strong for long enough, miracles actually do happen. While Carlos was discovering the possibility of miracles, Rosa Martinez was 3 miles away, pushing a cleaning cart through the empty halls of the Hancock building. The office complex was quiet at 8 p.m., with only the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Rosa moved slowly tonight, more slowly than usual. The chest pains had been getting worse over the past week, sharp stabs that took her breath away and left her gripping door frames until they passed. She had been hiding the severity of her condition from Carlos, but it was becoming harder each day. She paused outside an attorney's office, leaning against her cart and pressing her hand to her chest. The pain was like a fist squeezing her heart, making it hard to breathe, hard to think about anything except the surgery she couldn't afford and the time she was running out of. "Rosa, you okay?" Jennifer Kim appeared at the end of the hallway, pushing her own cleaning cart. Jennifer was 28, a single mother herself, working nights to support her 2 young daughters. She'd been Rosa's closest friend at Peterson's Family Market for the past 3 years. And lately she had been noticing things that worried her. "I'm fine," Rosa said automatically, straightening up and trying to smile. "Just tired." Jennifer wasn't fooled. She had seen Rosa pause like this several times over the past month, had noticed the way Rosa sometimes gripped the counter at the grocery store, the way she had started moving more carefully, as if every step required effort. "Rosa, you don't look fine. You look like you're in pain." Rosa began emptying trash cans, trying to appear normal. "I'm okay, Jennifer. Really." But as she bent to pick up a fallen piece of paper, another sharp pain hit her chest. This one was stronger than the others, so intense that Rosa gasped and dropped to one knee beside the wastebasket. Jennifer rushed to her side. "Rosa, what's wrong?" Nothing, Rosa whispered, but her face was pale and she was breathing in short, quick gasps. "Just give me a minute." Jennifer knelt beside her friend, deeply concerned. "Rosa, this isn't nothing. How long have you been having chest pains?" Rosa looked into Jennifer's worried eyes and felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her like a stone. For 8 months she had carried this burden alone. For 8 months she had pretended everything was normal while her heart slowly failed. She was so tired of pretending. 8 months, Rosa whispered. 8 months? Jennifer's voice rose with alarm. "Rosa, have you seen a doctor?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a breath. Jennifer helped Rosa to her feet and guided her to a chair in the nearby office. "What did the doctor say?" Rosa was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. The wedding ring she still wore after 10 years of widowhood caught the fluorescent light. Her husband Miguel would have known what to do. Miguel had always been the strong one, the one who solved problems and made decisions. Without him, Rosa had learned to carry everything herself. "The doctor said I need surgery," Rosa said finally. "My heart valve is failing. Without surgery, I have maybe a month left, maybe less." Jennifer stared at her friend in shock. "A month? Rosa, why didn't you tell me?" "Because there's nothing anyone can do. The surgery costs $47,000. We don't have insurance that covers it." "And Jennifer," Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper, "I'm not documented. I've been here 20 years, but I never fixed my papers. If I apply for help, they might send me back to Mexico." "Then what happens to Carlos?" Jennifer felt tears building in her eyes. Rosa had been like an older sister to her, always offering advice about raising children, always willing to cover extra shifts when Jennifer's daughters were sick. The idea that Rosa had been facing this alone was heartbreaking. "Rosa, you have to tell Carlos." "No." Rosa's voice was firm despite her weakness. "Carlos is about to graduate. He's been accepted to Northwestern University. He's going to be a doctor, Jennifer. He's going to help families like ours. I won't destroy his dreams with my problems. But if I die, he'll still go to college. I've been saving money. Not enough for the surgery, but enough for his first semester. After that, he'll find a way." Carlos is smart. He's strong. He'll be okay without me. Jennifer shook her head. Rosa, you're not thinking clearly. Carlos would rather have his mother than a college education. Any son would. Rosa stood up slowly, testing her balance. The pain in her chest had settled into a dull ache, manageable for now. You don't understand, Jennifer. Carlos is my miracle. When his father died, when we had nothing, when I didn't speak English well enough to get a good job, Carlos kept me going. He's the reason I learned English. He's the reason I work so hard. Everything I do is for him. She picked up her cleaning supplies and began wiping down a desk. Yesterday, I did something I never thought I would do. I told someone about our situation. You asked for help? Jennifer was surprised. Rosa was the most independent person she knew. Someone who would rather starve than ask for charity. Not exactly. I told Michael Jordan about Carlos, about how hard he works, about college, about what a good person he is. Jennifer's eyes widened. Michael Jordan? How did you meet Michael Jordan? He came to Peterson's with his mother. They were in my line. Rosa continued cleaning, but her movements were mechanical, distracted. I wasn't going to say anything, but watching him with his mother, seeing how gentle he was with her, it reminded me of Carlos. And I thought maybe someone should know that Carlos exists, that he deserves good things. What did Michael Jordan say? He asked for our address. Rosa paused in her cleaning. Jennifer, what if he wants to help? What if someone like that could actually care about people like us? Jennifer could hear the hope in Rosa's voice, fragile and desperate. Rosa, that would be amazing. But don't you think you should tell Carlos? If there's a chance someone wants to help him with college, don't you think he deserves to know? Rosa was quiet for a moment, thinking about her son at home, probably studying at the kitchen table, worrying about her, trying to figure out how to save a mother who couldn't be saved. Carlos has been asking questions, Rosa admitted. He knows something is wrong. He's too smart, too observant. Yesterday morning, he confronted me about the doctor visits, about why I've been so tired. What did you tell him? The truth. About the heart condition. About the surgery I can't afford. About the time I have left. Rosa's voice broke slightly. You should have seen his face, Jennifer. He looked so scared, so young. I've been trying to protect him from this. But I can't protect him from everything. Jennifer put her arm around Rosa's shoulders. Rosa, you don't have to carry this alone anymore. Carlos knows now. I know. If Michael Jordan wants to help, let him help. If there are programs available, apply for them. Fight for your life the same way you fought for Carlos's future. Rosa leaned into her friend's embrace, feeling some of the weight she had been carrying begin to lift. I'm scared. Jennifer, what if they send me back to Mexico? What if I apply for help and Carlos ends up alone in this country? What if you don't apply for help and Carlos ends up alone anyway? Jennifer asked gently. Rosa, you've been brave for 20 years. Be brave for 20 more. Let people help you. Let Carlos help you. Let Michael Jordan help you if he wants to. Rosa nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to ask for help. I've been taking care of myself and Carlos for so long. I forgot that sometimes other people want to take care of us too. Start by calling in sick tomorrow night, Jennifer said firmly. If Michael Jordan wants to meet with you, if there's any chance he can help Carlos go to college or help you get the surgery you need, then you owe it to both of you to be there. Rosa wiped her eyes and looked around the empty office. Tomorrow night, she might sit across from one of the most famous people in the world and ask him to save her family. The thought terrified her, but for the first time in months, it also gave her hope. Jennifer, she said quietly, will you pray for me tomorrow night? I'll pray for both of you, Jennifer promised. I'll pray that miracles do happen, especially for people who deserve them most. As they finished cleaning the office building together, Rosa allowed herself to imagine a future where Carlos went to college, where she lived to see him graduate, where their family's story had a happy ending. She didn't know that at that very moment, Carlos was at home, holding a scholarship offer that would change their lives forever. She didn't know that tomorrow night would bring answers to prayers she had been too afraid to pray. But for the first time in 8 months, Rosa Martinez went to sleep, believing that sometimes, when you've been strong for long enough, the universe sends you exactly the help you need. Friday evening arrived with clear skies and the kind of Chicago spring weather that made people forget about the long winter they had just survived. Rosa stood in front of her bedroom mirror trying to decide what to wear to the most important meeting of her life. She had called in sick to her evening cleaning job, the first time in 15 years she had missed work for anything other than Carlos's school events. Jennifer had covered her shift at Peterson's without asking any questions, just squeezing Rosa's hand and whispering, "Go change your life." Rosa's closet held exactly 3 dresses. One was black, worn to her husband's funeral 10 years ago. One was navy blue, purchased for Carlos's confirmation 3 years earlier. The third was dark green, bought at a thrift store for $12 when Carlos graduated from middle school. She chose the navy blue dress. It was simple, clean, and made her feel like the kind of mother who belonged at important meetings with important people. Carlos emerged from his bedroom wearing his only suit, a charcoal gray outfit Rosa had saved for months to buy him for job interviews and scholarship applications. At 17, he was already taller than his mother, with his father's strong jaw and Rosa's determined eyes. "You look beautiful, Mama," he said, adjusting his tie nervously. "You look like a young man who's gonna change the world," Rosa replied, reaching up to smooth his hair. They both stood in their small living room for a moment, looking at each other. Neither wanted to say what they were both thinking, that this meeting could determine whether they had a future together or whether Rosa would die knowing she had done everything possible to secure Carlos's dreams. "Mama," Carlos said quietly, "whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something. You are the best mother anyone could ask for. Everything good about me comes from you." Rosa felt tears threatening to ruin her carefully applied makeup. "Misho, you are my heart walking around outside my body. Everything I have done, everything I will do is because I love you more than my own life." A car horn honked outside their building. David Thompson had arranged for a car service to take them to the meeting location, the Chicago Athletic Association, a historic building downtown that Rosa had only seen from the outside during her bus rides to work. The driver was a kind older man who helped Rosa into the back seat and complimented Carlos on his mature. As they drove through the city, Rosa watched Chicago pass by her window, the neighborhoods where she had worked and lived and raised her son, the streets that held 20 years of memories. "Mrs. Martinez," the driver said, "I don't know what kind of meeting you're going to, but I can tell you're both good people. Whatever happens tonight, you should be proud of the young man you've raised." Rosa squeezed Carlos's hand. Even strangers could see what she had always known, that Carlos was special, that he deserved every opportunity the world could offer. The Chicago Athletic Association was even more impressive up close than Rosa had imagined. The building rose majestically from the sidewalk, with elegant stonework and windows that gleamed in the early evening light. A doorman in uniform greeted them warmly and escorted them to the elevator. "Mr. Thompson is waiting for you in the private dining room on the 20th floor, the doorman explained. "Beautiful view of the lake up there." As the elevator climbed, Rosa felt her heart racing, not from her medical condition this time, but from pure nervousness. She had never been in a building this elegant, never eaten at a restaurant that required reservations, never been in a situation where someone might hand her family a miracle. The elevator doors opened to reveal a hallway lined with photographs of Chicago history. At the end of the hall, David Thompson stood waiting for them, dressed in the same professional suit he had worn to their apartment. "Mrs. Martinez, Carlos, welcome," David said warmly. "You both look wonderful. Are you ready for this?" "As ready as we'll ever be," Carlos replied, his voice steady despite his nerve. David led them to a private dining room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The view was breathtaking. The lake stretched to the horizon like an ocean, and the city lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. "Please, have a seat," David said, gesturing to a large table set for 5 people. "Your host will be here shortly. Would you like anything to drink while we wait?" Rosa ordered water, afraid her stomach was too nervous for anything else. Carlos asked for the same. They sat quietly, taking in the elegant surroundings, the crystal glasses, the white tablecloths, the view that made Chicago look like a jewel spread out below them. "Mr. Thompson," Rosa said quietly, "I need to ask you something." Of course. Is this person, are they really going to help Carlos? Because if this is just a polite meeting, if they're just being nice to us, I need to know. I don't want to get my son's hopes up. The dining room door opened, interrupting her question. Michael Jordan walked in, followed by his mother, Dolores. Rosa gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Carlos's eyes widened, and he started to stand before remembering his manners and waiting for the adults to take their seats. "Hello, Rosa," Michael said with the same warm smile she remembered from Peterson's family market. "It's good to see you again." Rosa couldn't speak. Her mind couldn't process that Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan, was standing in front of her, smiling at her like an old friend. "And you must be Carlos," Michael continued, extending his hand to shake Carlos's. "I've heard amazing things about you." Carlos found his voice first. "Mr. Jordan, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'm not sure why, but thank you." Dolores Jordan stepped forward and took Rosa's hands in hers. "Rosa dear, you look lovely. How are you feeling?" The kindness in Dolores's voice broke through Rosa's shock. I'm overwhelmed, Mrs. Jordan. I can't believe you're both here. We're here because of what you told my son last Saturday," Dolores said gently. "About your family, about your son's dreams, about the kind of young man you've raised." Michael took his seat across from Rosa and Carlos, his expression serious but warm. "Rosa, over the past week, I've learned a lot about your family. I've spoken with Carlos's teachers, his principal, his employers. Everyone says the same thing, that you've raised an exceptional young man with character, intelligence, and heart." Carlos looked at his mother, surprised. "You investigated us?" "I had to," Michael said honestly. "Carlos, I meet a lot of people who ask for help. Some are genuine, some are not. I needed to know who you and your mother really are before I could make any decisions." Rosa felt embarrassed. "Mr. Jordan, I understand. You have to be careful. People probably try to take advantage." "Rosa," Michael interrupted gently, "you're not people. You're a mother who loves her son so much that she was willing to risk everything, her pride, her privacy, her dignity, to give him a chance at his dreams. Do you know how rare that kind of love is?" Tears began flowing down Rosa's face. "Mr. Jordan, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," Michael replied, "because I have something to tell both of you that's going to change your lives." He opened a folder he had brought with him and pulled out several documents. "Carlos, you've been awarded a full scholarship to Northwestern University. Tuition, room and board, books, and a living stipend. 4 years, as long as you maintain good grades." Carlos stared at the papers Michael was showing him, unable to process what he was seeing. "A full scholarship? But how? Why?" "Because you've earned it," Michael said simply. "Because you represent everything good about hard work, dedication, and family love. Because your mother's courage in speaking up for you showed me what real strength looks like." Rosa was crying openly now, her hands shaking as she reached for her son. "Carlos, do you understand what this means? You can go to college. You can become a doctor. You can have the life we dreamed of. But there's more," Michael continued, his voice becoming even more gentle. "Rosa, I also know about your heart condition." Rosa's crying stopped abruptly. She looked at Michael with fear in her eyes. "I know about the surgery you need, the money you don't have, the time you're running out of. And I want you to know that Carlos's scholarship comes with one very important condition." Rosa held her breath. "You have to get the surgery. All of it. The hospital costs, the surgery, the recovery, everything. It's all covered. Dr. Sarah Chen at Rush Medical Center is expecting your call on Monday morning." The room was completely silent except for the sound of Rosa's quiet sobs. Carlos stared at Michael Jordan, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Mr. Jordan," Carlos whispered, "why? Why would you do this for us?" Michael looked at Carlos, then at Rosa, then at his own mother sitting beside him. "Because 25 years ago, my mother worked 3 jobs so I could chase my dreams. She sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. When I see your mother doing the same thing for you, I see the woman who made everything in my life possible." He paused, his voice growing emotional. "Carlos, your mother didn't ask me for money that day. She asked me to remember that there are young people like you out there. People who deserve chances. People who will use those chances to make the world better. She reminded me what success is really for." Dolores Jordan reached across the table and took Rosa's hand. Rosa, you gave my son something precious that day. You reminded him why God blessed him with the ability to help others. Let us give something precious back to you. Time with your son and the chance to see him become the doctor you've always known he could be. Rosa looked around the table at these people who had appeared in her life, like angels. Michael Jordan, who could have ignored a desperate cashier but chose to listen instead. Dolores Jordan, who understood a mother's love because she had lived it herself. David Thompson, who had made their miracle feel real and possible. I don't know how to thank you, Rosa said through her tears. Don't thank us, Michael said. Just promise me something. Promise me that when Carlos becomes a doctor, when he's helping other families like yours, you'll tell him to remember this moment. Tell him to remember that sometimes the most important thing successful people can do is lift others up. Carlos reached over and hugged his mother tightly. Mama, you saved us. You saved both of us. Rosa held her son close, feeling his strong heartbeat against her chest, knowing that soon her own heart would be strong enough to beat for many years to come. For the first time in 8 months, Rosa Martinez allowed herself to believe in tomorrows. As the dinner continued in the elegant private dining room, Rosa found herself relaxing for the first time in months. The weight she had carried for so long, the fear, the secrets, the crushing responsibility was finally lifting from her shoulders. Carlos sat beside her, still holding the scholarship documents, reading them over and over as if they might disappear. Michael Jordan watched them both with satisfaction, but there was something else in his expression, something that suggested he had more to share. Rosa, Michael said gently, setting down his water glass. There's something else we need to discuss. Rosa's heart skipped, not from her condition this time, but from sudden worry. Had she misunderstood something? Was there a catch she hadn't seen? During my investigation this week, Michael continued, I learned some things. Things that go beyond what you told me at the store. Carlos looked up from his papers, sensing the shift in tone. Dr. Sarah Chen at Rush Medical Center. Michael said carefully, she mentioned that your situation is more complicated than just the surgery costs. Rosa felt her stomach drop. She knew where this was going. Your immigration status, Michael said quietly. The words hung in the air like a confession. Rosa had hoped, somehow, that this detail wouldn't come up. That maybe they could fix her heart and help Carlos with college, without anyone asking the hard questions. Mr. Jordan, Rosa whispered, I can explain? You don't need to explain anything. Michael interrupted gently, but I need you to know that I'm aware of it, and it doesn't change anything. Carlos looked confused. What immigration status? Mama, what is he talking about? Rosa closed her eyes, preparing to share the secret she had hoped Carlos would never need to know. Micho, when we came here from Mexico, when you were just a baby, I never fixed our papers properly. What does that mean? Carlos asked, though something in his voice suggested he was beginning to understand. It means, Rosa said, her voice barely audible, that we're not supposed to be here. Legally. It means that if the wrong people find out, they could send us back to Mexico. Carlos stared at his mother, processing this information. We're undocumented? Yes. For how long? 20 years. Carlos was quiet for a long moment, thinking through everything this meant. All the times his mother had been extra careful around police officers. All the times she had paid for everything in cash. All the times she had seemed nervous about going to doctors or applying for any kind of help. Is that why you didn't get medical care sooner? He asked. Yes. Rosa admitted. I was afraid that if I went to the hospital, if I applied for help, someone would ask questions. Someone would find out that we don't belong here. But you do belong here, Dolores Jordan said firmly, speaking for the first time in several minutes. Rosa, you've been here for 20 years. You've worked, you've paid taxes, you've raised a son who will contribute more to this country than most people who were born here. The law doesn't always see it that way. Rosa said sadly. Michael leaned forward. Rosa, Dr. Chen has assured me that Rush Medical Center doesn't report immigration status to any government agencies. Their only concern is providing medical care to people who need it. But after the surgery, Rosa said, what then? What if someone finds out? What if they take Carlos away from me after everything we've been through? Michael exchanged a look with David Thompson, who had been quietly taking notes throughout the conversation. Actually, David said, opening his briefcase, we've been working on that too. He pulled out another set of documents. Rosa, There are legal ways to address your immigration status. It's not simple and it's not quick, but it's possible. How? Carlos asked. Well, David explained. You're 17, almost 18. You've been in this country since you were an infant. You're graduating as valedictorian. You've been accepted to college. There are provisions in immigration law for young people in your situation. What kind of provisions? Rosa asked, afraid to hope. The DREAM Act provisions, David said. For young people who were brought here as children, who have completed high school, who are pursuing higher education. Carlos, you could potentially qualify for legal status. Carlos looked at his mother. And what about Mama? That's more complicated, David admitted. But there are family reunification options. If Carlos gets legal status, it might be possible for Rosa to apply for adjustment of status as well. Michael could see the worry in Rosa's eyes. Rosa, I want you to understand something. David Thompson is one of the best immigration attorneys in Chicago. He's going to handle your case personally, and all of his fees are covered. You would do that too? Rosa asked, overwhelmed. I would do that too. Michael confirmed. Because here's what I learned this week. Rosa, you came to this country 20 years ago with nothing but hope for a better life for your son. You've worked multiple jobs. You've paid taxes. You've been a model citizen in every way except for a piece of paper you couldn't afford to fix. He paused, looking directly at her. Carlos is graduating as valedictorian. He's going to college. He's going to become a doctor. He's going to spend his life helping other people. If that's not the American dream in action, I don't know what is. Carlos reached over and took his mother's hand. Mama, is this real? Can we really fix everything? David leaned forward. I won't lie to you. Immigration cases are complicated, and there are no guarantees. But you have several things working in your favor. You've been here for 20 years with no criminal record. Carlos is an exceptional student with a bright future, and you have resources now to navigate the legal system properly. What do we need to do? Rosa asked. First, you focus on getting healthy, Michael said. Get the surgery, recover, get strong. David will start working on the immigration paperwork, but that's going to take months, maybe longer. And Carlos should start college in the fall as planned, David added. His acceptance to Northwestern and his scholarship actually strengthen the immigration case. Rosa looked around the table at these people who had appeared in her life like guardian angels. A week ago, she was a dying woman with no options and no hope. Tonight, she was looking at the possibility of legal status, life-saving surgery, and her son's college education. I have one more question, Rosa said quietly. What is it? Michael asked. Why? I understand helping Carlos with college. I understand even helping with my surgery. But the immigration case, the legal fees. Mr. Jordan, you don't even know us. Why would you go this far for strangers? Michael was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that he was still figuring out himself. Rosa, do you remember what you said to me that day in the store? I said a lot of things. You said that Carlos studies my game. Not because he wants to be a basketball player, but because he wants to work as hard as I do. You said he believes that if Michael Jordan can come from where he came from and achieve what he's achieved, then maybe a boy from Pilsen can become a doctor. Michael's voice grew soft. You reminded me that people look up to me not just for what I accomplished, but for what I represent. Hope. Possibility. The idea that if you work hard enough, if you never give up, if you have people who believe in you, you can overcome anything. He looked at Carlos. Your mother gave me the greatest gift anyone can give a successful person. She reminded me what success is for. It's not for collecting trophies or making money. It's for lifting other people up. It's for making sure that other kids like Carlos get their chance to chase their dreams. Rosa wiped tears from her eyes. Mr. Jordan, I don't know how we'll ever repay you. You don't repay it, Dolores Jordan said gently. You pay it forward. Someday, when Carlos is a successful doctor, when he has the power to help other families in desperate situations, he'll remember this moment. He'll remember that someone believed in him when he needed it most. Carlos nodded solemnly. I promise. I promise I'll spend my life helping other people the way you've helped us. That's all the repayment we need, Michael said. As the evening wound down, Rosa realized that her life had been divided into two parts. Before this meeting and after. Before, she was dying with secrets. After, she was living with possibilities. For the first time in 20 years, Rosa Martinez wasn't afraid of tomorrow. September sunshine streamed through the windows of Northwestern University's Science Building as Carlos Martinez hurried across campus, his backpack heavy with textbooks for organic chemistry, biology, and calculus. 6 months had passed since that life-changing dinner at the Chicago Athletic Association, and Carlos still sometimes had to pinch himself to believe it was all real. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Mijo, how was your exam? Call me when you get a chance. Love, Mama." Carlos smiled as he read the message. Rosa's recovery from heart surgery had been remarkable. Dr. Sarah Chen had performed the valve replacement in May, just 2 weeks after Carlos's high school graduation. The surgery had been a complete success, and Rosa's energy had returned gradually over the summer. More importantly, Rosa was no longer afraid. The immigration case was progressing slowly but positively, with David Thompson handling every detail. Carlos had received his work authorization and was on track for permanent residency. Rosa's case was more complicated, but David was confident they could resolve her status within the next year. Carlos found a quiet spot on the campus quad and called his mother. "Carlos." Rosa's voice was bright and strong. "How did your chemistry exam go?" "It went well, Mama. Professor Williams said our class is one of the strongest she's had. I think I got an A." "Of course you did. You always do." Rosa's pride came through clearly over the phone. "Are you eating enough? Are you getting enough sleep?" Carlos laughed. Some things never changed. Even with a healthy heart and legal status in progress, Rosa was still a mother first. "I'm eating plenty, Mama. The dining hall food isn't as good as yours, but it's fine. How are you feeling today?" "Strong," Rosa said, and Carlos could hear the wonder in her voice. "Carlos, I walked to the grocery store this morning. I carried all the bags myself. 6 months ago, I couldn't climb the stairs without stopping to rest." Carlos felt his throat tighten with emotion. Watching his mother slowly die had been the hardest thing he'd ever experienced. Watching her come back to life had been the most beautiful. "I have some news," Rosa continued. "I started volunteering at Rush Medical Center yesterday." "Volunteering? Mama, you don't have to work. The scholarship covers everything I need. I'm not working for money, Mijo. I'm working because I want to help other families like ours. Families who are scared, who don't speak English well, who don't know how to navigate the hospital system." Carlos understood immediately. His mother had found her purpose in helping others who faced the same challenges she had overcome. Dr. Chen suggested it. Rosa explained. "She said I have a gift for making people feel comfortable, for helping them understand what the doctors are telling them. Yesterday I helped translate for a woman from Guatemala, whose husband needed emergency surgery. Carlos, you should have seen the relief in her eyes when she finally understood what was happening." "That's amazing, Mama. I'm so proud of you. And I have more news. Remember Maria Santos, from the restaurant where you used to work?" "Of course. Her daughter Sophia just started at Northwestern too. She's a freshman, wants to study engineering. She got a scholarship from the Rosa Martinez Medical Scholarship Fund." Carlos paused, confused. "The what?" Rosa laughed. "Oh, did I forget to mention that? Mr. Jordan established a scholarship fund in my name. It helps students from immigrant families go to college, with a focus on those who want to serve underserved communities." Carlos sat down heavily on a bench. Overwhelmed, he named a scholarship fund after you. "After us." "Really?" "The Rosa Martinez Medical Scholarship Fund. Sophia is the first recipient, but there will be others. Mr. Jordan wants to help more families like ours." Carlos thought about Michael Jordan's words from that dinner 6 months ago. About success being measured not by what you achieve, but by how you lift others up. Even after helping Carlos and Rosa so dramatically, Michael was continuing to help others. "Mama, that's incredible. It gets better," Rosa said, and Carlos could hear her smiling through the phone. "They want me to help interview the scholarship applicants." "Me? Can you imagine? I'm going to help decide which students get their dreams funded." Carlos could imagine it perfectly. His mother, who had sacrificed everything for his education, who had risked her pride and safety to give him a chance, was now in a position to give other students the same opportunities. "There's something else," Rosa continued. "Dr. Chen has been talking to me about going back to school myself. School? To become a patient advocate. A real one. With certification and training. She thinks I have natural skills for helping people navigate medical situations. Carlos felt tears building in his eyes. 6 months ago, his mother was dying and afraid. Now she was talking about going back to school, about building a career helping others, about having a future that stretched beyond just surviving. Mama, that's wonderful. You should absolutely do it. I'm scared, Rosa admitted. I'm 52 years old, Carlos. I never finished high school in Mexico. What if I'm not smart enough? Are you kidding me? Carlos said firmly. Mama, you raised me to be valedictorian while working 3 jobs and hiding a heart condition. You learned English well enough to help people navigate the medical system. You had the courage to ask Michael Jordan for help when I was too proud to ask anyone. If you're not smart enough, then nobody is. Rosa was quiet for a moment. When did you become so wise? I learned from my mother. After they hung up, Carlos sat on the bench for a long time, watching other students hurry across campus to their classes and activities. Many of them took their opportunities for granted, the chance to get an education, to pursue their dreams, to build the lives they wanted. Carlos would never take any of it for granted. Every chemistry exam, every biology lab, every late night studying in the library was a gift. A gift from his mother's courage, from Michael Jordan's generosity, from Dr. Chen's skill, from David Thompson's expertise. But mostly it was a gift from love. The love his mother had shown by working herself nearly to death for his future. The love Michael Jordan had shown by remembering what success was really for. The love of strangers who had become family when family needed them most. Carlos pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he had added 6 months ago. Michael Jordan had given Carlos his personal number, telling him to call if he ever needed anything. Carlos had never used it. Until now. Mr. Jordan, this is Carlos Martinez. Carlos, how are you doing? How's college treating you? It's incredible, sir. Everything is incredible. I'm calling because I wanted to tell you something. What's that? I found out about the scholarship fund you created in my mother's name, and about her volunteering at the hospital, and about her plans to become a patient advocate. Your mother is a remarkable woman, Carlos. She's going to help a lot of people. Mr. Jordan, I want you to know that 6 months ago, you didn't just save our lives. You gave us purpose. You showed us that being helped doesn't make you weak. It makes you responsible for helping others. Michael was quiet for a moment. Carlos, you and your mother did that all by yourselves. I just opened some doors. You opened the door to the rest of our lives, Carlos said. And I promise you, we're going to spend those lives opening doors for other people. I never doubted that for a second, Michael said. Your mother raised you right. As Carlos walked to his next class, he thought about the chain of kindness that had started with his mother's desperate courage in a grocery store checkout line. That courage had led to help for their family, which was leading to help for other families, which would lead to even more help for families not yet known. Sometimes, Carlos realized, the most important thing you can do is have the courage to ask for help when you need it. Because you never know what miracles might be waiting on the other side of that courage. October brought cooler weather to Chicago, and with it, a phone call that would change everything once again. Michael Jordan sat in his home office, reviewing some business contracts, when Patricia Williams knocked on his door. Michael, you have a call. It's Dr. Sarah Chen from Rush Medical Center. She says it's important. Michael picked up the phone. Curious. He had stayed in touch with Dr. Chen since Rosa's surgery, mostly to check on her recovery progress. Michael, thank you for taking my call, Dr. Chen said. I wanted to talk to you about Rosa Martinez. Is she okay? Is there a problem with her recovery? Quite the opposite, Dr. Chen said. And Michael could hear excitement in her voice. Michael, do you realize what you've started? What do you mean? Rosa has been volunteering here for 2 months now. In that time, she's helped over 50 families navigate our system. Families who were lost, scared, unable to communicate with doctors, afraid to ask for help because of their immigration status. Michael leaned back in his chair, listening intently. But here's what's remarkable, Dr. Chen continued. Rosa doesn't just translate or provide comfort. She connects with these families in a way that changes them. She gives them hope. She shows them that their situation isn't hopeless, that there are people who care, that asking for help is brave, not shameful. That sounds like Rosa, Michael said, smiling. There's more. 3 of the families she's helped have started volunteering themselves, helping newer families, sharing resources, building a support network. And Michael, 5 of those families had children who were struggling in school. Kids who thought college was impossible for people like them. Michael sat up straighter. What happened to those kids? Rosa connected them with tutoring programs, scholarship resources, college prep courses. She told them about Carlos, about his journey from grocery store bagger to Northwestern pre-med student. 2 of them have already improved their grades dramatically. 1 just got accepted to the University of Illinois with a partial scholarship. Michael felt something stirring in his chest. The same feeling he'd had when Rosa first told him about Carlos in the grocery store. Dr. Chen, what are you telling me? I'm telling you that your investment in one family has created a ripple effect that's helping dozens of families, and I think we can make it bigger. Michael was quiet for a moment, thinking, what did you have in mind? I want to expand the Rosa Martinez Medical Scholarship Fund. I want to create a comprehensive program that doesn't just pay for college. It provides mentoring, family support, immigration assistance, healthcare navigation, everything Rosa and Carlos needed, packaged into a program that can help hundreds of families. That would be expensive, Michael said. It would be transformative, Dr. Chen replied. Michael, I've been working with underserved communities for 15 years. I've never seen anything like what Rosa has accomplished in just 2 months. She's not just helping individuals, she's changing how an entire community thinks about hope and possibility. After hanging up with Dr. Chen, Michael sat quietly for a long time. He thought about that day in Peterson's family market, when Rosa had gathered the courage to speak to him about her son. He thought about the investigation that followed, the dinner at the Chicago Athletic Association, the scholarships and medical bills he had paid. At the time, he had thought he was helping one family. Now he was beginning to understand that he had planted a seed that was growing in ways he never could have imagined. Michael picked up his phone and called Carlos at Northwestern. Mr. Jordan? Carlos answered, surprised. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Carlos. I just got off the phone with Dr. Chen. She told me about the work your mother is doing at the hospital. Isn't it amazing? Carlos said, his voice filled with pride. Mama calls me every day to tell me about the family she's helping. She's like a different person now. Confident, purposeful, happy. Carlos, I have an idea, and I want your opinion on it. Of course, sir. What if we could help not just one family at a time, but entire communities? What if we could create a program that provides everything your family needed? Scholarships, medical care, legal help, mentoring, all in one place. Carlos was quiet for a moment, thinking, that would help so many people, Mr. Jordan. But would it really work? Your mother is proving it works. Every day. Dr. Chen says Rosa has helped 50 families in 2 months, and those families are helping others. It's creating a network of support that's bigger than any single donation could be. What would you need from us? I'd need your mother to help design the program. I'd need her to train other volunteers, to share her methods, to help us understand what really works. And Carlos, someday when you're a doctor, I'd need you to be part of it too. Carlos felt his throat tighten with emotion. Mr. Jordan, you've already done so much for us. Carlos, this isn't about what I'm doing for you anymore. This is about what we're doing together. Your mother's courage started something that's bigger than any of us imagined. I want to help it grow. Meanwhile, across town, Rosa was having her own conversation with someone who would change her perspective on the reach of their story. She was at Rush Medical Center helping a young mother from Honduras navigate the insurance paperwork for her daughter's surgery, when a woman approached her in the hospital lobby. Excuse me, are you Rosa Martinez? Rosa looked up, surprised. The woman was well-dressed, probably in her 30s with kind eyes and a professional appearance. Yes, I'm Rosa. Do I know you? My name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm a reporter with Univision Chicago. I've been hearing stories about the work you're doing here at the hospital. I was wondering if you might be willing to talk with me. Rosa felt nervous immediately. I don't think I'm the right person for television. I just help families when they need it. That's exactly why you're the right person, Elena said gently. Rosa, do you realize that word is spreading throughout the Latino community about what you do here? People are calling you El Ángel del Hospital, The hospital angel. Rosa blushed. I'm not an angel. I'm just a mother who knows what it's like to be scared and not know where to turn. That's what makes you special, Elena said. Rosa, there are thousands of families in Chicago who are facing the same challenges you faced. What if your story could reach them? What if it could give them the courage to ask for help when they need it? Rosa thought about her conversation with Michael Jordan 6 months ago, when she had been terrified to speak up but had done it anyway because she loved her son. That single moment of courage had changed everything. What would I need to do? Just tell your story. Tell people how you found the courage to ask for help, how that help transformed your family's life, and how you're now using that experience to help others. Rosa nodded slowly. If it helps even one family find the courage to ask for help when they need it, then I'll do it. That evening, Rosa called Carlos to tell him about the interview request. Mama, that's wonderful. You should absolutely do it. I'm nervous, Micho. What if I say the wrong thing? Mama, just speak from your heart. Tell people what you told Michael Jordan that day in the store. Tell them that asking for help isn't weakness, it's love. It's courage. It's the first step toward change. Rosa smiled, remembering her son's wisdom. When did you become so smart? I learned from my mother, Carlos said, as he always did. After they hung up, Rosa sat in her small apartment, the same apartment where she had once hidden her heart condition and worried about college costs, and marveled at how much had changed. She was no longer afraid of tomorrow. She was excited about it. Tomorrow, she would tell her story on television, and maybe that story would reach another scared mother in another checkout line, giving her the courage to speak up for her child's dreams. Tomorrow, the Rosa Martinez Medical Scholarship Fund would help another student go to college. Tomorrow, another family would discover that sometimes when you've been strong for long enough, the universe sends you exactly the help you need. May 2003 arrived with the kind of Chicago spring that made residents forget about the brutal winter they had endured. 5 years had passed since that fateful day in Peterson's Family Market, and Northwestern University's medical school graduation ceremony was about to begin. Carlos Martinez, now 22 years old, stood in his cap and gown among his classmates, looking out at the packed auditorium. In the third row, his mother Rosa sat between Michael and Dolores Jordan, tears already streaming down her face. Next to them sat Dr. Sarah Chen, David Thompson, and Jennifer Kim from Peterson's Market, all beaming with pride. But Rosa wasn't just crying because her son was graduating medical school. She was crying because of how far they had all come together. The Rosa Martinez Medical Scholarship Fund had grown beyond anyone's imagination. What had started as help for one family had become a comprehensive program serving over 200 students across Chicago. Rosa had indeed gone back to school, earning her GED at age 54 and then completing a certification program to become a licensed patient advocate. She now worked full-time at Rush Medical Center, leading a team of bilingual advocates who helped immigrant families navigate the healthcare system. The program had expanded to include not just scholarships, but family counseling, immigration assistance, job training, and community health clinics. Rosa had been featured on television multiple times, and her story had inspired similar programs in other cities. The scared woman who had once been afraid to ask for help had become a national spokesperson for immigrant families' rights to healthcare and education. As the graduation ceremony began, Carlos thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. 4 years or pre-med courses at Northwestern, maintaining the 3.8 GPA required by his scholarship. 4 years of medical school, ranking in the top 10% of his class. And now, in 2 months, he would begin his residency in internal medicine at Rush University Medical Center, the same hospital where his mother had received her life-saving surgery. Ladies and gentlemen, the dean announced, graduating summa cum laude, with a specialty in internal medicine and a focus on serving underserved communities, Carlos Eduardo Martinez. As Carlos walked across the stage to receive his medical degree, he looked directly at his mother. Rosa stood up, applauding through her tears, and mouthed the words, "I'm so proud of you." Carlos had never forgotten the promise he made to Michael Jordan 5 years ago, that he would dedicate his career to helping families like his own. During medical school, he had volunteered at free clinics in Pilsen and Little Village. He had helped translate for Spanish-speaking patients, just as his mother did professionally. He had tutored high school students applying for medical school scholarships, But more than that, Carlos had learned something important about the power of one person's courage to change multiple lives. After the ceremony, there was a reception at the university. Carlos found himself surrounded by professors, fellow graduates, and family friends, all congratulating him on his achievement. But the conversation he had been most looking forward to was with the man who had made it all possible. "Dr. Martinez," Michael Jordan said with a huge smile. "I like the sound of that. Mr. Jordan, I can't believe this day is finally here." "I can believe it," Michael said. "I never had any doubt you'd make it to this point. Your mother raised you to succeed." They walked to a quieter corner of the reception hall, where Rosa was deep in conversation with Dr. Chen about a new family that needed help with immigration paperwork. "Carlos," Michael said, "I have something to tell you. Something I've been working on that I think you'll find interesting." "What's that?" "I've been talking with the board of directors at Rush Medical Center. They're interested in creating a new position, Director of Community Health Outreach, someone who would oversee medical care for underserved communities, manage the scholarship program, and develop new ways to help immigrant families access health care." Carlos looked puzzled. "That sounds like an amazing position. Who are they considering for it?" Michael smiled. "They're considering you. After you complete your residency, of course." Carlos stared at Michael in shock. "Me? But I haven't even started my residency yet." "Carlos, you've been preparing for this job your whole life. You understand the community we're trying to serve because you come from that community. You speak the language, literally and figuratively. You know what it feels like to be afraid to ask for help, and you know what it feels like to receive help when you need it most. But I'm just one person. How could I manage such a big program?" "You won't be managing it alone," Michael said. "Your mother will be your second in command. Rosa has already agreed to help design the position. She knows the community needs better than anyone, and she knows how to connect with families who are struggling." Carlos felt overwhelmed. 5 years ago, he had been a high school student worried about affording college. Now he was being offered the chance to lead a program that could help thousands of families. "There's one more thing," Michael continued. "We want to expand the program nationally. Chicago has been our test case, and it's been incredibly successful. We want to take what we've learned here and create similar programs in other cities with large immigrant populations." "National expansion? Los Angeles, Houston, New York, Phoenix. Cities where there are families just like yours with hard-working people who need opportunities, who need someone to believe in them, who need to know that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness." Carlos looked across the room at his mother, who was now helping a young woman fill out paperwork, while Dr. Chen translated medical terms. Rosa had found her calling in helping others navigate the same challenges she had once faced. Now Carlos was being offered the chance to do the same thing, but on a much larger scale. "Mr. Jordan, why are you offering me this opportunity?" Michael was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something he was still discovering himself. "Carlos, 5 years ago, your mother did something that changed my life as much as it changed yours. She reminded me what success is really for. She showed me that the most important thing wealthy and famous people can do is use their resources to create opportunities for others." He paused, looking at Rosa. "But here's what I've learned since then. The real impact doesn't come from the money. It comes from empowering people who have lived through struggles to help others facing the same struggles. Your mother is more effective at helping immigrant families than any social worker or government program could be, because she's been where they are. And you think I could do the same thing? I know you could do the same thing. Carlos, you're not just a success story. You're proof that the system works when people are given real opportunities. When families like yours succeed, when they turn around and help other families succeed, that's how communities change. That's how the world gets better." Carlos felt tears building in his eyes. "Mr. Jordan, I accept. Of course I accept. There's one condition," Michael said with a grin. Carlos looked worried. "What condition?" "You have to promise me that 10 years from now, when some scared mother approaches you asking for help for her child, you'll remember how this all started. You'll remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you can't do it alone." Carlos nodded solemnly. "I promise. I'll remember that it all started with my mother having the courage to speak up in a grocery store checkout line. And I'll remember that it continued because someone was willing to listen," Michael said. As the reception wound down, Carlos found his mother packing up leftover cake to take to the family she was working with at the hospital. Some things never changed. Rosa Martinez was still taking care of everyone around her. "Mama," Carlos said, "Mr. Jordan told me about the job offer. About us working together to expand the program." Rosa looked up, her eyes shining with pride and excitement. "Can you imagine, Mijo? We started by asking for help for one family, ours. Now we get to help hundreds of families, maybe thousands. Are you ready for that kind of responsibility?" Rosa thought about the question seriously. 5 years ago, she would have been terrified by such a big challenge. Now, after years of helping families navigate healthcare, immigration, and education systems, she felt ready for anything. "Carlos, do you know what I've learned in the past 5 years?" "What?" "I've learned that there are Rosa Martinezes in every community, mothers who are working multiple jobs, hiding their struggles, afraid to ask for help because they don't think they deserve it. And there are Carlos Martinezes too, brilliant young people whose potential is being wasted because they can't see a path forward." She smiled at her son. "If we can help those families find each other, if we can show them that asking for help is the first step toward helping others, then we can change the world one family at a time." Carlos hugged his mother tightly, amazed by her wisdom and strength. "Mama, when did you become so wise?" "I learned from my son," Rosa said, reversing their usual roles. As they left the graduation reception together, Carlos thought about the full circle their lives had taken. 5 years ago, they had been the family in desperate need of help. Now they were the family in position to help others. The checkout line at Peterson's Family Market seemed like a lifetime ago, but Carlos knew he would never forget the courage it had taken for his mother to speak up that day. That single moment of bravery had created ripples that were still spreading, touching lives in ways they were only beginning to understand. Tomorrow, another scared mother would find the courage to ask for help. Another brilliant student would discover that college was possible. Another family would learn that sometimes when you've been strong for long enough, miracles really do happen. And Carlos and Rosa Martinez would be there to make sure those miracles kept happening, one family at a time. 26 years had passed since that cold March morning at Peterson's Family Market. Dr. Carlos Martinez, now 43 years old, and one of Chicago's most respected community health advocates, stood at the podium of the American Medical Association's annual conference in downtown Chicago. The ballroom was packed with doctors, nurses, and healthcare administrators from across the country, but Carlos was looking for specific faces in the audience. His mother, Rosa, now 76 and still volunteering at Rush Medical Center 3 days a week, and Michael Jordan, who had remained a quiet but constant presence in their lives for over 2 decades. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conference moderator announced, "this year's Humanitarian Award for Outstanding Service to Underserved Communities goes to Dr. Carlos Martinez, Director of the National Community Health Outreach Program." As applause filled the ballroom, Carlos walked to the microphone, carrying with him a folder of notes he had been preparing for weeks. Today, for the first time in public, he was going to tell the complete story of how a desperate moment in a grocery store checkout line had grown into a national movement. "Thank you for this incredible honor," Carlos began, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. "But before I say anything else, I need to tell you about a woman sitting in the front row. Her name is Rosa Martinez, and 26 years ago, she saved my life by having the courage to ask for help when she needed it most." Carlos looked at his mother, whose eyes were already filling with tears. Next to her, Michael Jordan sat quietly, wearing a simple dark suit instead of his usual basketball attire. "My mother was a cashier at a neighborhood grocery store," Carlos continued. "She was dying from a heart condition she couldn't afford to treat. I was 17 years old, about to graduate as valedictorian of my high school class, but we couldn't afford to send me to college. We were undocumented immigrants living paycheck to paycheck, afraid to ask for help because we thought it would mean deportation." The ballroom was completely silent. Carlos could see people leaning forward in their seats, captivated by the story. One Saturday morning in March 1998, my mother was working her register when a customer came through her line. That customer was Michael Jordan, shopping with his mother. And in that moment, my mother made a decision that changed the course of our entire lives. Carlos paused, looking directly at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. "She told him about me, not to ask for money, but to ask for something much more important, recognition that hardworking families like ours existed, and that we deserved a chance to pursue our dreams. Carlos went on to explain how Michael had investigated their story, how he had provided not just financial support, but comprehensive help that addressed every challenge their family faced. He talked about the surgery that saved Rosa's life, the scholarship that paid for his education, the legal assistance that helped them gain legal status. "But here's what I want you to understand," Carlos said, his voice growing stronger. "This story isn't really about Michael Jordan's generosity, as extraordinary as that was. This story is about what happens when one act of courage creates a ripple effect that touches thousands of lives." Carlos opened his folder and pulled out a set of statistics. The Rosa Martinez Medical Scholarship Fund, which grew from that single encounter, has now provided full scholarships to 8047 medical students from immigrant families. Of those students, 6023 have completed their medical degrees. Today, they serve in underserved communities across the United States. He looked out at the audience, many of whom were taking notes. Those 623 doctors have provided free or reduced cost medical care to over 180,000 patients. They've delivered 2,400 babies, performed 890 life-saving surgeries, and provided preventive care that has improved health outcomes in dozens of communities. The numbers were staggering. But Carlos wasn't finished. The community health centers we've established in 12 cities have served over 75,000 families. Our patient advocacy program has helped 15,000 families navigate the healthcare system. Our immigration assistance program has helped 3,200 families achieve legal status. Carlos paused, letting the scope of the impact sink in. But perhaps most importantly, we've trained over 400 community health advocates, people like my mother who understand the challenges facing immigrant families because they've lived those challenges themselves. He looked at Rosa again, who was crying but smiling. Every single one of those numbers represents a family. A mother who didn't have to die from a treatable condition. A brilliant young person who got to pursue their dreams. A child who grew up with healthcare instead of fear. Carlos closed his folder and spoke from his heart. 26 years ago, my mother taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's love. It's courage. It's the first step toward being able to help others. That lesson has guided every decision I've made since then. He gestured toward the audience. Many of you work in hospitals and clinics, where you see families like mine was, scared, struggling, unsure where to turn. I want you to remember that behind every success story is someone who had the courage to ask for help when they needed it. Carlos's voice grew emotional as he reached his conclusion. The American Medical Association has honored me today. But the real heroes are the people who have the courage to admit they can't do it alone. People like my mother, who risked everything to give her son a chance. People like Michael Jordan, who understood that true success means lifting others up. People like Dr. Sarah Chen, who saw patients as human beings first and immigration status second. He paused, scanning the faces in the audience. And people like all of you, who chose careers in medicine because you believe in healing, in helping, in making the world a little bit better for the people who need it most. Carlos stepped back from the microphone and began to walk back to his seat. But then he stopped and returned to the podium. Actually, there's one more thing I need to say. My mother is 76 years old, and she still volunteers at the hospital 3 days a week. She still helps families navigate the healthcare system. She still shows people that asking for help is the first step toward hope. He looked directly at Rosa. "Mama, you taught me that the most important thing successful people can do is remember where they came from and help others get to where they're going. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like." The ballroom erupted in applause. People stood, clapping not just for Carlos but for Rosa, for Michael, for the story of how one moment of desperate courage had grown into a movement that was still changing lives. As Carlos returned to his seat, Rosa reached over and squeezed his hand. "Mijo," she whispered, "your father would be so proud." "We both learn from the best teacher," Carlos whispered back. Michael Jordan, who rarely spoke at such events, stood up and walked to the microphone. The ballroom fell silent again. "I just want to say one thing," Michael said simply. "Rosa Martinez reminded me 26 years ago that success without compassion is meaningless. Every day since then, I've tried to live up to the example she set, the example of having the courage to speak up for the people you love, even when you're scared." He looked at Rosa and Carlos. "The real measure of success isn't what you achieve for yourself. It's what you make possible for others." Rosa and Carlos Martinez have made more possible for more people than most of us ever will. They're the real champions in this room. As the conference concluded and people began to file out, Rosa sat quietly, overwhelmed by the realization of how far their story had traveled. 26 years ago, she had been a dying woman with a secret, terrified to hope for miracles. Tonight, she was surrounded by hundreds of medical professionals who had heard her story and understood its message. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. And sometimes the most important thing successful people can do is say yes when someone asks. The scared cashier from Peterson's Family Market was gone. In her place sat a woman who had learned that courage, once found, never really goes away. It just grows stronger and spreads to others who need it. As the medical conference wound down and guests began to leave, Rosa Martinez found herself surrounded by doctors and healthcare workers who wanted to meet the woman behind the story they had just heard. But there was one conversation she had been avoiding all evening. The one where she would finally reveal the complete truth about what had happened that March morning in Elena Rodriguez, the Univision reporter who had first interviewed Rosa years ago and had since become a close friend, approached with a small recording device. "Rosa," Elena said gently, "I know this is overwhelming, but I think it's time. After all these years of people asking what you actually said to Michael Jordan that day, don't you think the world deserves to know the whole truth?" Rosa looked across the room at Michael, who was talking quietly with Carlos about expanding their program to 3 more cities. For 26 years, she had never publicly shared the exact words that changed their lives. She had always said she told him about Carlos or asked him to remember that families like ours existed. But she had never revealed the complete conversation. "Are you ready?" Elena asked, setting up her camera. Rosa nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. At 76, she still felt nervous about being the center of attention, but she understood the importance of this moment. "People always ask me," Rosa began, looking directly into the camera, "what exactly I said to Michael Jordan that day in Peterson's Family Market. What words could possibly have convinced one of the most famous people in the world to change our lives so dramatically?" She paused, gathering the same courage she had needed 26 years ago. "The truth is, I almost didn't say anything at all. I was just a cashier. He was Michael Jordan. Who was I to speak to him about anything beyond his grocery order?" Rosa's voice grew stronger as she continued. "But as I rang up his groceries, I watched how gentle he was with his mother. How patient, how loving. It reminded me of my Carlos. And I thought about how much I wanted my son to have the chance to treat me with that same pride someday." She took a deep breath, preparing to share the secret she had carried alone for so long. "So when I handed him his receipt, I didn't ask for money. I didn't even mention our struggles at first. Instead, I did something much scarier. I told him the truth about who we were and what we believed in." Rosa closed her eyes, remembering that moment as clearly as if it had happened yesterday. "I said, Mr. Jordan, I know you probably hear this all the time, but I want you to know that watching you play basketball has given my son hope. Carlos studies your game, not because he wants to be a basketball player, but because he wants to work as hard as you do. He wants to be as dedicated to his dreams as you are to yours." Elena leaned forward, sensing this was just the beginning. "I continued," Rosa said, her voice becoming more emotional. "My son believes that if Michael Jordan can come from where he came from and achieve what he's achieved, then maybe a boy from Pilsen can become a doctor and help people. You've taught him that it's not about where you start. It's about how hard you're willing to work and how much you're willing to sacrifice." Rosa paused, wiping away tears that had started to flow. "And then I told him the one thing I was most afraid to say out loud." The room had grown completely quiet. Even Michael and Carlos had stopped their conversation and were listening. "I said, Mr. Jordan, I'm dying. My son doesn't know yet, but I probably won't live to see him graduate from college. The doctors say I need surgery that cost $47,000, and we have maybe $3,000 saved. But because of your example, because of the way you honor your mother and work so hard for your dreams, my son believes anything is possible." Rosa's voice broke slightly, but she continued, "That belief is the greatest gift I can leave him. Thank you for giving my son hope when I couldn't give him anything else." She looked directly at Michael Jordan, who was now standing with tears in his eyes. "I wasn't asking for money," Rosa emphasized. "I was asking for something much more important. I was asking him to remember that his success meant something to families like ours." I was asking him to understand that heroes have a responsibility to the people who believe in them. Elena asked the question everyone was thinking. What did Michael say in response? Rosa smiled through her tears. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me for what felt like forever. Then he asked for our address, and I thought maybe he would send Carlos an autographed picture or something small like that. She shook her head in wonder. I never imagined that 3 weeks later, a lawyer would show up at our apartment with a full scholarship offer and a plan to save my life. Michael Jordan walked over and knelt beside Rosa's chair, just as he had done 26 years ago at their first formal meeting. Rosa, he said quietly, you saved me that day more than I saved you. You reminded me why I work so hard, why I've been so blessed, and what I'm supposed to do with those blessings. You gave me purpose beyond basketball. He looked up at the camera. What Rosa did that day wasn't ask for charity. She shared her truth with love and hope, instead of bitterness or desperation. She trusted that if she told her story honestly, someone might listen. She was right. Rosa reached down and took Michael's hands. Mr. Jordan, what you did in response will never be forgotten. Not because of the money you spent, but because you proved that the heroes we admire can actually be as good as we hope they are. She looked back at the camera. You showed my son that success without compassion is meaningless, and that the real measure of a person isn't what they achieve, but what they do for others once they have the power to help. Carlos joined them, putting his arms around both his mother and Michael Jordan. What my mother did that day, Carlos said, was demonstrate that sometimes the most profound changes in the world begin with a single moment of honest human connection. She taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's an act of love for the people who depend on you. Elena asked one final question. Rosa, what do you want people to remember about your story? Rosa thought for a moment, looking around the room at the doctors and nurses who had heard her story, at her son who had become everything she had dreamed he could be, at Michael Jordan who had proven that heroes could be real. I want people to remember that there are scared mothers and ambitious children in every community, families who are working hard but struggling, who need someone to believe in them, who deserve a chance to succeed. She stood up, her voice growing strong and clear. But most of all, I want people to remember that courage is contagious. When one person has the bravery to ask for help, it gives others permission to ask too. When one successful person chooses to help, it inspires others to help too. Rosa looked directly into the camera, speaking to the thousands of people who would eventually see this interview. What the cashier did that day wasn't special or heroic. What the cashier did was trust that kindness exists in the world. She trusted that if she told her truth with love and hope, someone might care enough to listen. She smiled, thinking about all the families who had been helped by their program over the years. And what I learned is that when you have the courage to ask for help when you need it, you become strong enough to help others when they need it. That's how the world gets better, one act of courage at a time. As the interview concluded and the camera stopped recording, Rosa sat back down, emotionally drained but finally free from carrying that secret alone. Michael Jordan remained kneeling beside her chair. Rosa, thank you for trusting me with your story 26 years ago, and thank you for sharing the complete truth tonight. Thank you for listening, Rosa replied. Both times. Carlos helped his mother to her feet, marveling at her strength and dignity. Mama, you've spent 26 years helping other people find their courage. Tonight you showed them where that courage comes from. It comes from love, Rosa said simply. Love for our children, love for our families, love for the possibility that tomorrow can be better than today. As they left the conference together, Rosa, Carlos, and Michael, they walked past Peterson's family market, which was still operating in the same location where their story had begun. The building looked smaller than Rosa remembered, but the memories it held had grown larger than any of them could have imagined. 26 years ago, a dying woman had found the courage to speak up for her son's dreams. Tonight, that same woman had inspired hundreds of medical professionals to remember that behind every patient is a family hoping for miracles. What the cashier did was change the world, one moment of courage at a time. And the world was still changing, one family at a time, because she had been brave enough to ask for help when she needed it most. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell us your city or country. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories like this one. We share real tales of hope, courage, and human kindness that prove miracles do happen when people care for one another. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. In a world that often feels divided, stories like Rosa and Carlos Martinez remind us that kindness is contagious, courage can change everything, and sometimes all someone needs is for one person to believe in them. Thank you for listening, and remember, you never know when your own moment of courage might change someone's life forever.